Armored Core Law, Allmind, an AI created to make a better world, or a mutated coral who has become something that can change its own fate. Allmind's identity is something never told in history. In fact, what we do know is Allmind is the name of a mercenary liaison organization, whose goal is to aid mercenaries working on Rubicon to achieve their missions through support, be this through offering training, armored core parts, and even the abilities of the OS system, allowing 621 to become better and stronger. In truth, should this all sound very familiar to some, this is because Allmind and the AI all the way back in the first and second timelines of Armored Core seem to share this same idea. However, there is something different about Allmind compared to the 9-ball AI and the controller, and that is something I hope to show as we explore Allmind's history. The first and perhaps key point to note is Allmind seems to have always been watching 621, as discovered by other historians, that an Allmind ghost unit can be seen during the mission Clear Out Grid 135, where the ghost had fought 3 defunct MTs and won very easily. Although this ghost unit cannot be seen or scanned for in the very first mission of 621, Illegal Entry, the reason behind this ghost being here for 621 rather than coming to just see what is going on is revealed later on, when Allmind pulls up a list of candidates for its coral release project, and 621 can be identified. It's also worth mentioning Walter's reaction, as it's clear he is hiding the fact he knows this ghost is a production of his former home, the Rubicon Institute. That machine. Unknown craft destroyed. Get back to the mission, 621. It's then Allmind goes a little quiet, that is for the first 2 possible endings to the Coral War, the Fires of Raven and the Liberator of Rubicon, only offering services to 621, now using Raven's call sign, these being the arena, the part shop, and OS tuning. So what happened? It's never really explored in the pages of history of the Coral War. However, it's from what we learn in the final outcome to the Coral War that could lead to some suggestions about what happened. One is that O'Keefe, being once part of the release project, was able to stall Allmind long enough to prevent them from acting. On the other hand, maybe Walter and Carla had a hand in keeping 621 closed off from the all-knowing hand of Allmind. And one final suggestion could be Allmind is able to somehow reverse time itself, though this is a rather far-fetched idea. So, getting back on more stable ground instead of time travelling, the real documented history of Allmind comes down to the final outcome of the war, titled The Dies Cast. It's in this route of history that Allmind would start contacting 621 personally about the release project. Yet, before all this, 621 will have 3 events happen. The first will be 621 choosing to take out the 2 Red Gun armed cores G4 and G5, showing the Rubicon Liberation Front this new mercenary is not a corporation dog. What this will lead to is the mission Escort the Strider, where 621 will arrive just in time to see 2 weapons destroyed with ease. A pair of IA-05 Weevil sea weapons that ride through the dust clouds with blinking red lights. These sea weapons are the creations of the Rubicon Institute, but with them no longer in the picture, it seems someone is sending them out here. We know this as during the fight when more sea weapons show up, including 4 IE-09 Helianthus. Walter will comment about how this is way too many for a chance encounter. From what we know, only 2 factions had access to weapons like this, the PCA and Allmind. Yet after this encounter, there is very little to no evidence about either of them being involved. Instead, the loss of the Strider is written off by the Rubicon Liberation Front, and Walter talks about looking into the attack, however nothing ever comes of it. While this is the case, theories have arisen that Allmind was behind this attack, as the PCA was never really that bothered about the front. They could have overpowered the front easily at any time, yet never made any real attempts to put them down, only keep order. Allmind, however, with its release project, would later comment during 621's fight with Father Dolmayan, saying, "The Rubicon's symbiosis is nothing more than the suppression and exploitation of coral." So getting rid of the very craft that allows the front to mine coral certainly would seem something that would benefit the goals of Allmind. But the third and final event before Allmind would personally start hiring 621 for a role in their project would be a mission from an independent mercenary named Kate Markson, a female pilot who seems to have been hired by Bowes to stop a PCA inspection squad with a sudden raid from independent mercenaries. It's within this mission 621 and Walter will find this inspection squad is very well armed and in great numbers. It's also noted by Walter how this is all very odd, as the PCA is not known to do inspections, and along with this, independent mercenaries don't usually hire other mercenaries. A sign that this inspection may not be all it seems, it's also noted during this mission by the PCA and Walter that Kate is not on their files nor registered in the mercenary database. This again would be later answered when 621 starts working with Allmind to find Kate works for Allmind too. However, it is thanks to voice analysis that it is later found Kate is nothing more than a puppet of Allmind, an AI-controlled Armored Core, reflecting back on the first timeline of Armored Core, where an AI made Nineball, the greatest AC pilot, but inside the famous Red Machine, there was no pilot. This mission could have very well been to test the skills of 621 before Allmind put its own plan into motion. And once the mercenaries had proven their skill, it was time for Allmind to begin. The story of 621 does not change too much, as a lot of the battles, including the death of the Iceworm and the retreat of PCA forces, still happens. But it's these 5 missions that shift the course of history for 621 and the release project. The first would be Coral Export Denial, where Allmind will first call 621 an asset to the release project and send the mercenary on a task to stop the corporations from transporting coral to their research labs. Allmind is willing to sacrifice this coral as they wish to make use of the density of the amassed coral to achieve coral release. At this time, the corporations have only collected about 1.6% of all coral, so Allmind reports, and so 621 will do this, with Kate Markson helping them out to stop any transports who escape. The next mission to change 621's history is Eliminate V3, where after reaching Depth 3 within Watchpoint Alpha and being told to stop by Arquebus, Allmind would then have 621 eliminate O'Keefe, who was once their inside man in Arquebus. However, he has now turned against them. It's here the famous line of "drink your coffee flavoured sludge" is given to 621 by O'Keefe, used to explain that being human is not so bad, and coral release is not something 622 wants, nor understands. But not listening or taking Ayre's word into account about how O'Keefe is a pessimist, but he lives for the way things are, a life that can't coexist with what we want. Reach the Coral Convergence is the next, and here instead of fighting IB-01 Cell 240 and getting captured by Arquebus after, Allmind will cut off Volta from the mercenary and instead direct the Hound into some nearby sewers, where Snail is waiting with a small squad of MTs. It's after ambushing Snail and fighting for a bit that Iguazu will show up spouting about how they told him where to find 621. This is when, as pointed out by other AC historians, that we see Iguazu here has equipped his AC differently this time, with the 04101 Mind Alpha arms, along with other changes. He would not be the only one, however, as we know O'Keefe, being once an Allmind agent, uses an Allmind head part. Sulla, who works for Allmind, uses the 06041 Mind Alpha legs and Allmind weapons, and Roku Monsen, who seems to have been in contact with Allmind, although his purpose to them is up for debate, uses the 07061 Mind Alpha core and Allmind weapons too. These 3 and 621 are suggested to be the 4 candidates for the release project, as shown in the Eliminate V3 mission cutscene. Still getting back on track, it's then after all this that the run down to the end of the Dice Cast route begins, with the mission MIA, which sees Allmind reactivate the Watchpoint defences as they watch them tear and kill the panicking corporation forces. Allmind does not seem too bothered about all this, telling 621 that without their leaders, the corporations are weak. A chain made of human links is easily broken. It's after this Allmind will change the database information on 621, making it seem like the mercenary died during the battle in Institute City. All the while, Allmind will keep them under their protection. What this protection seems to be is putting 621 into a sleep-like state until they need them, and that would be after Walter, who now come out as members of the Observers, have taken control of the Xylem and are trying to crash it into the Vescular plant, where Arquebus has been storing all the coral. It's here Allmind will have 621 take back control of the Xylem by taking out Chatty, who has taken over the main control frame of the Xylem, before Allmind takes care of Walter and Carla itself. What this all leads to is the final fight between Allmind, Air, 621, and Iguazu, where Allmind tells 621 and Air their use for them is over, and now they must die. It's here, as we know, Allmind would fail, as Iguazu, who had become one with this monster, would take control of the Soul 644 and fights to the death with 621, knocking Air out of her AC Echo. With Allmind defeated, 621 and Air trigger the coral release and send coral into space, allowing it to spread among the stars. The die is cast, and whatever happens now will happen. The choice of one person and mutated coral could bring humanity and coral together as a new being, or doomed humanity, erasing what it means to be human, and instead now there is only these coral-infused beings. Well, this is just the basic outline of Allmind's history. We also have to note a few other important items that show Allmind was working behind the scene. These include the Bow's Arsenal No. 2 video recording, extracted from a wreck which contains data recorded by the craft's cameras in the past. It reads, "It seems that this craft was once stationed at Bow's Arsenal No. 2. At first glance, the recovered image depicts nothing out of the ordinary. However, on closer inspection, one can identify noise in one corner of the picture, indicative of digital interference, potentially an effect of monitor display deception jamming. A sign Allmind ghost units had been spying within Bow's Arsenal No. 2, most likely because of the small vein of coral running through the site. To achieve their project, no one else could have coral. As such, the silencing of this arsenal and others, as we now know, was down to Allmind, as ghost units attack 621 when the mercenary investigates the arsenal first without knowing about Allmind. Bow's guard's last word also shows the attack happening, as communications is shut down, and within the picture is none other than an Allmind AC. Taking the fact that Kate Markson shares the same armored core build as in the picture, it is most likely her that does this with ghost units' help. Mutated wave detected is also another one, as it was found on a ghost unit, and seems to be speaking about using Sella as a trigger to do with the mutated wave within Watchpoint Delta, something only Allmind would have wanted to do. And finally, the enforcement system, which reads, "The enforcement system had been buried deep within Rubicon all this time. Little wonder that the suppression fleet was so quick to arrive. For now, we shall monitor the observers' actions and provide indirect aid to Arquebus." The two groups talked about here are only of interest to Allmind, as they used Arquebus to bring them to the Convergent, and as for the observers, they are a group that need to go for the project to succeed. In the end, this is all we know on Allmind and their history within the Coral War. But to finish this report, we shall take a look at the products of Allmind. The products of Allmind include two AC frames, these being the Mind Alpha and Mind Beta. In truth, there is a third, a Mind Gamma, which unlike the frame labelled Mind Beta, does actually use the two Beta parts. The only difference between Beta and Alpha is a change of weapons, from the detonating bazooka, which is switched to the KRSV, the HMMR plasma thrower, to the Arquebus VP-67LD laser dagger, and the detonating missile launcher switched to the VP-61PS pulse shield. Granted, according to the arena profile of the Beta, its AI capabilities have allowed it to function as well as a highly talented mercenary. To cover all ground with these frames, I will talk about them all, starting with the armoured core Mind Alpha. It is a bipedal armoured core which has quite some high defences, and only shows a real weakness to explosive weapons. The frame itself offers a good speed and room to work with for using energy weapons. Using Mind Alpha with its weapons loadout, this being the detonating bazooka, the HMMR plasma thrower, the JVLN Beta, and the 45091 orbit. Piloting this craft, I felt Alpha wanted to maintain a mixture between a close and mixed range style of combat. The bazooka required good timing to be launched or foes would dodge it, but this timing was made easier close up. The plasma thrower, I admit, I ended up using like a whirling plasma saw blade, as I would start it spinning and then ram into foes. The orbit was just used to add more firepower, and the beta missiles were very much hit and miss. Sometimes I got the timing and distance right, other times the foe moved, and the string of explosive only made a nice background for the fight. Mind Beta, in this case, I swapped the head and legs of the Alpha to let the Beta have Beta parts. The real difference is the craft is more fast, but unlike Mind Alpha, the loadout of this frame is quite different. Using the KRSV multi-energy rifle, the VP67LD laser dagger, a 45091 laser orbit, and the VP61PS pulse shield. Mind Beta, with its beta parts on, is very much a more close combat focused craft, with the shield allowing a pilot to charge up the energy rifle for that hard hitting shot while being protected. Or it can go in fast and hard, firing off energy shots along with the orbit to build up that stagger meter before hitting a foe hard with a few stabs from the laser dagger or a charged up hit for big damage. As for Mind Gamma, it's an Allmind craft that really seemed to take G5 weapons, put them on an Alpha Beta frame with the right legs and head, then take away the linear rifle for the KRSV and swap out its missiles for an energy orbit. Mind Gamma, I can say, is a craft that lives to be flung at a foe. It wants to be close to a foe at all times, and the shield is there just to block incoming fire, as this craft races towards a foe, ready to hit them with all they've got. The KRSV does not even need to be charged, just single shots from the energy rifle with the Ludlow and the orbit firing together should bring down most foes. Last but not least, weapons. Allmind has produced a number of weapons, including 3 arm weapons, the 44143 HMMR plasma thrower, the 44141 JVLN alpha detonating bazooka, and the 44124 KRSV multi-energy rifle. They also have produced 2 back weapons, the 45091 JVLN beta detonating missile launcher and the 45091 ORBT laser orbit. And that really is it. This all-knowing power that seems to be 3 steps ahead of everyone else is one that even after all this planning and killing would fall to one of its own chosen. This ends the report on Allmind.